After their hot start to the season, two Cincinnati Bearcats are drawing NFL interest for the upcoming draft.
You are Locked On Bearcats, your daily podcast on the Cincinnati Bearcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Bearcats. My name is Jeff Carr, and I'm all Cincinnati all the time. I've worked in multiple athletic departments, and I've been a football season ticket holder for 7 years now. Locked On Bearcats is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team, your Bearcats, every single day. And on today's podcast, Russ Heltman's back with me here, and we are going to tell you exactly how Saturday will go later on in today's show. In just a few minutes, we'll tell you the most concerning part about the UCF matchup this Saturday, but we will begin with the NFL and their interest in not one but two Bearcats and how it's all growing. That's coming up on today's podcast that is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. And today we have joining us once again one of the most trusted voices around Clifton. He's Russ Heltman. Russ, what you got for me, man?
Great to be with you, Jeff. Excited to get in the show.
Yeah, man. Another Big 12 week here in UCF. It always feels a little more interesting because, you know, we came over from the American to Big 12, so there's a little bit of history with us more so than the other Big 12 teams. It feels like there's a lot of opportunity against the Knights this week, and we'll dive into that here in just a few. But I wanted to look at this because you had wrote over on Cincinnati Bearcats on SI that there's a couple of NFL teams that are really liking what they see from Brendan Sorsby and from Jake Golday. It was not necessarily NFL teams. It was Dane Brugler that really has been liking what he has seen from those guys this year.
Yeah, Brendan Sorsby kind of entered the season with a mid-round, late-round grade for his quarterbacking in terms of projecting to the NFL, and he's performed very, very well so far this season, really comfortable in that passing attack, and it's helped shoot him up Dane Brugler's draft board if he were to declare for the draft after the season. Sorsby does have one more year of eligibility remaining, and that's going to be really interesting to see what happens with that, Jeff, because if he gets like a third-round grade or a second-round grade, might as well just stay back at Cincinnati, keep collecting those NIL paychecks, and be the big man on campus leading a really, really exciting, potentially, Bearcats team in 2026. And you could be the number one quarterback in the class potentially in 2027, given that pond is completely murky right now. We have no idea really who's going to be the number one passer in 2027. So good for Brendan Sorsby to see him moving up the board. Jake Golday, as you mentioned, I would be shocked at this point if he's not a top 100 pick coming out this year. I think he's probably the best shot right alongside Joe Royer to be the number one or highest picked Bearcat since Sauce Gardner a couple of years ago. UC hasn't had a second round pick mixed in there outside of Sauce. And I believe Alec Pierce was a second round pick as well by the Indianapolis Colts. So it would be the highest draft selection since Pierce, I would imagine it's going to be, because Jake Golday has been lights out. 9.8 tackles per game, all over the field, forcing fumbles, almost had his first interception of the season last week. Got to bring two hands to the party, quote from Jake Golday, to the game against UCF this week. But Jake Golday has really elevated his play after playing defensive end at the University of Central Arkansas. He has switched over to middle linebacker, weak side linebacker is where he's played this past weekend and been completely lights out. Was solid last year, but I think has been the best linebacker in the Big 12 so far this season. Leads all linebackers in the Big 12 with 9.8 tackles per game. Rangy, 6'4", 4.5 speed type of guy. The NFL is going to love those players all the time. And then a player that didn't necessarily get mentioned in Dane's piece that I wrote about yesterday, but he did have him in his top 3 player rankings as of the midway point of the college football season. And Brugler released that article today on The Athletic. And the top 3 of the tight end position included Joe Royer at number 2. Royer obviously has all the tools, has all the physical tools to be able to be a solid tight end in the NFL. We'll see if he gets more involved in the passing game. Has been a little bit less involved over the past few, but still looking for some more explosives from Joe Royer against the non-FCS team. Obviously had the big long touchdown, or the big long catch. I don't know if it was a touchdown against Northwestern State, but a long catch against them. Looking for him to do that maybe once or twice or 3 times to boost his stock in terms of the biggest weakness in his game kind of viewed from the outside is his ability to turn a 5-10 yard curl route, break a tackle, and turn it into 20, 25, 30 yards. We'll see if Joe Royer can start to do that a little bit more down the stretch of the season. But I mean, that didn't even mention Dante Corleone, Jeff. And at this point, I think we can definitively say, yeah, Dante is going to get drafted somewhere this year. Maybe not in the first round or second round like he was projected a couple of years ago, but he will get selected, and there will be multiple Bearcats drafted for the first time in the Scott Satterfield era this coming season, because I believe they've only had one player selected in each of the past 2 drafts.
That's the fun part too, where it's like, yes, these guys have drawn, like the rising interest in Sorsby and Jake Golday, but Joe Royer's kind of like, hey, come on up, guys. We're up here on this level, and they're starting to get up to that level. You mentioned, going back to Sorsby for just a minute, you mentioned there's kind of a murkier looking, play caller, signal caller guy for 2027 as opposed to 2026. Now, if his hair catches fire for the rest of the year, there's probably a different conversation, but does it feel like that almost precludes him from declaring this year?
I don't know. It's all on Sorsby. I mean, it's all going to just depend on what the talent evaluators tell him at the end of the year. They kind of always, you put your name in the pool if you're a draft eligible player who's guys in the range of the top 250, top 260, and then you kind of get told from there, you're most likely to go in this range of the draft versus where you actually thought you were going to go, and you can assess your future from that standpoint. So I think it's probably too early to tell at this point whether or not he would forego that opportunity and come back to Cincinnati, but we probably will get a pretty good sense of where he's standing draft-wise by this time 2 months from now, I would imagine.
Kind of moving back to Jake Golday as well. Like, it feels to me, just watching him play and seeing how the Bearcats use him and stuff like that, he is. It seems like he will be seen more on a regular basis on Sunday between him and Sorsby, because it feels like his game just absolutely is exactly what the NFL is looking for. Like, he looks like the prototypical defender right now that every NFL team is just begging for.
Yeah, he's not. I wouldn't say he's Fred Warner. I'm not going to put that kind of pressure on Jake Golday in the NFL, but this is how Fred Warner profiled. I believe he went to BYU, coming out of BYU. This kind of long, rangy, tall linebacker, 6'3", 6'2" plus, a guy that can really hurt you on the speed ends, can cover sideline to sideline, and has the football acumen, especially in the pass coverage areas, to be able to really, really hurt you. We've seen Fred Warner be really impactful with his interception skills as a San Francisco 49er. So if Jake Golday can continue to improve on that front, then, I mean, he's, like I just said, he's got all the tools to be able to be a really impactful off-ball linebacker in the NFL. I'm not saying he's going to be Fred Warner, but Fred Warner was another one of those guys, Jeff, who coming out of college, he wasn't a first-round pick, I don't believe, or even a second-round pick, more of a mid-round guy that kind of came onto the scene later in his career. And how many times do we see these diamonds in the rough come out of nowhere, especially at Cincinnati, and then go on to have really, really impactful NFL careers? We've seen it many a time this century.
Especially on defense. Kind of feels like there's like a weird diamond in the rough like philosophy here. When it comes
it's like
to
Sauce Gardner, a 3-star recruit, turning him into a guy like that. So
it's great to see the upward trajectory of that. But yeah, like I think too, if a scout were to watch this defense and take Dante Corleone and Jake Golday off of the defense, it would just be such a big difference in how this unit plays, because it'd feel like as those two guys go, that's really how they go.
Yeah. And I mean, Gavin Gerhardt, I wouldn't be shocked if he he will get an NFL opportunity, I would imagine, in a camp somewhere. Would not be shocked if he's a top 7-round pick. Same with Joe Cotton at the left tackle position. If he keeps playing the way he played against Iowa State, he will be a top 60 pick, because you just cannot find players of his size, his speed, that can defend NFL defensive ends like he potentially could at the next level. And it's a big reason Joe Cotton was a very popular name for power conference programs to go after this offseason for that exact reason and that exact potential ceiling.
It's going to be fun to monitor just how well.
One more, Cyrus Allen. Yeah. I mean, he's playing really well too.
That's true.
Cyrus Allen, he keeps producing like this. He's going to be getting NFL looks. So 4, 5, maybe 6 guys potentially drafted this coming April. I wouldn't put that much pressure on the program. I'd probably more like 3 to 4. I don't know if we're going to get a historic haul like the 2021 team had, but much more than one draft pick this coming cycle, I would imagine, for the Bearcats.
Well, I know this, like with the draft prospects and how well they've played up to this point, they have an opportunity this weekend against UCF. And at least on paper, it seems like an easy win for the Bearcats. But there's one area that UCF could provide some issues for them. We'll discuss that coming up next. It's almost the weekend. That means it's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered. Powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For the Bearcats this past week against Iowa State, it's all about the running game. I'm going to give it to two guys. We'll give it to Evan Pryor and give it to Tawee Walker because Evan Pryor went over 100 yards and 2 scores, and Tawee Walker went viral, not once, but twice for running over Carson Willick, that linebacker from Iowa State. The running game was all over the place and absolutely came through big for this Bearcats team in a huge win. And just like Evan Pryor and Tawee Walker delivered for the Bearcats, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order. Stack it all up in a season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. There's also a great introductory offer over on FanDuel right now. If you place your first $5 wager and it wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets. So create your account today and throw that $5 on the Bearcats minus 10.5 against UCF on Saturday. I feel like the Bearcats are going to cover that spread. Good teams win, great teams cover, and the Bearcats are going to do both this Saturday. Plus the total over-under of 53.5. Very interesting because the Bearcats have been smashing that over the last couple of weeks. I think they will in this game too. So I'm going to take the Bearcats minus 10.5, and I'm going to take over 53.5. That's all over on FanDuel. Again, download the FanDuel app today, and your first $5 wager that wins get you $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download FanDuel today. Thank you for making Locked On Bearcats part of your everyday routine and your first listen. If you are not yet an everydayer, please hit that subscribe button. We're free and available on all platforms. All right, UCF is coming into town this Saturday, and it's not quite the UCF we know from years past. There's definitely a lot of questions on their offensive side of the ball, particularly from injuries at quarterback. But it seems like they run the ball pretty well, and they've got a pretty talented defensive line. What is the biggest area of concern for you for UC in this matchup?
It's got to be the defensive side of the ball for Cincinnati going up against the UCF offense. And even with the quarterback questions, I'm guessing they're still going to be able to move the ball on a UC team that has not been great defensively so far this season. We look at the overall kind of numbers for Cincinnati, very good scoring wise, not very good yards wise. They're giving up very successful drives consistently, but they're bowing up in the red zone. Jeff, I think they're top 25 nationally in the red zone so far this season. Yeah, 25th exactly, allowing 47% touchdown rate to their opponents when they go into the red zone. 17 red zone trips this season allowed by Cincinnati. That ranks 59th nationally. So a kind of a big discrepancy there between the amount of quality drives getting to the red zone and the amount of those quality drives that are turned into touchdowns. That's where UCF is going to have an issue here. I think they're going to be able to run the football. They're going to be able to put drives together. But when push comes to shove and they need execution of those short yardage plays in those tight window areas, in the tight red zone, we've seen Brendan Sorsby elevate his play and be an absolute weapon in that sense. 100% score rate. Cincinnati, I believe, has 14 or 15 touchdowns, I believe, now in the red zone through 5 games. That's just astoundingly good so far. I think they had 24, 25 total in the red zone the entire season last year. So it just goes to show they're on pace to almost eclipse that by double digits. So that matchup going up against a complete question mark at quarterback for UCF. We don't know if Taven Jackson's going to play. We don't know if Ja'Carri Brown's going to play. I just can't think that UCF's going to execute enough in the red zone to be able to keep this game close enough that they need to against an offense at Cincinnati that completely mismatches against a UCF defense in a good way for Cincinnati Bearcats fans. But keeping it on the UCF offense versus the Cincinnati defense, overall, this is just not an explosive group. 85th nationally in EPA per rush, UCF is 87th nationally in EPA per dropback. They're not creating big plays in that sense. And that's a huge boon for Cincinnati, which has not allowed many big plays this year and is willing to give up a kind of shorter depth of target, and willing to do that because they'll take those completions that are more likely on that shorter depth of target over biting up forward and giving up some big plays on the back end, which was a bit of an issue against Iowa State. But Rocco Becht is so much better as a passer than anybody that they're going to throw out there, even if Taven Jackson plays in this game. Jackson this season, not good. 906 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, 86th ranked QBR in the entire country at 51.7. That compares to Brendan Sorsby's 87.6 QBR, I believe, which is just astoundingly good. I mean, he's number 5 nationally, 87.7 QBR for Brendan Sorsby this season. So a massive quarterback mismatch here. And I just don't see this UCF offense being explosive enough and getting enough points on those quality drives to be able to take out this UC, or to be able to cause enough problems for this UC defense to really fold down the stretch. 119th nationally in points per quality drive rate. That's just not going to get the job done against the defense in Cincinnati that is not giving up many points once those quality drives enter the red zone. So I think it's a huge issue as I kind of wrap up my thoughts on the UCF offense versus UC defense. They don't really do a lot of things that can take advantage of what UC has struggled with this year.
It's interesting because when I first saw the spread, it was, I think it was higher than 10.5, or maybe it's
12.5, and it moved down. Yeah.
Yeah. It's moved down to 10.5. And I still kind of felt like maybe that had been an overreaction, but kind of hearing that now I think like, 10.5 seems kind of right, because like you said, like if they can move the ball 20.
Spoiler alert, I think it's as sharp a number as it can get, as for my score prediction later in the game, later in this show.
I like that, because it feels like they're going to move the ball between the 20s, but that doesn't score you points. That doesn't matter. We saw that a lot last year with UC, where it was like, sure, you can go 20 to 20 all you want, but once you get inside the 20, you really start to have a lot of problems here. And it feels like the Bearcats, as much as we criticize the cushion that they give in the middle of the field, that's not a problem when you get into the red zone. We've seen that. I almost wonder if we see an interception that's not called back because of defensive pass interference this time. I would love to see.
Right. That's a big thing to point out, Jeff, is it was a 38-30 game last week, but 15 points directly came from some interesting penalty calls, to say the least.
Shenanigans, I think, is the correct scientific term for that one. I am intrigued, because with these key injuries to the quarterback, and even if you mention if Taven Jackson does play, their number 1 guy, he's nothing to shake a stick at compared to Jalen Daniels or to Rocco Becht. So you're not exactly looking at the same matchups here. It seems like 2 weeks in a row now, the Bearcats are going to go against teams that have injuries in key positions, because I did see too, I think one of their key defensive linemen are out for this game.
Yeah, and that'll take us to the offensive side of the ball for Cincinnati, where, I mean, they could hang 40 in this game. I would not be shocked at all. It's just a bad matchup for the UCF defense, which ranks 118th nationally in EPA per rush allowed. That's not what the doctor ordered against this 300 rushing attack of Cincinnati, which is 2nd nationally in yards per carry. They have a lightning thunder go-to options in Tui Walker and Evan Pryor, who we talked about struggling a little bit when we first started doing these discussions last month. They have been lights out over the past few weeks, hitting holes really hard. We saw Tui Walker running with a reckless abandon, or in a good way, against Iowa State. And then Evan Pryor has taken full advantage of his opportunities, and he had his first 2 touchdown performance of his college football career this past weekend. So the rushing attack is firing on all cylinders. It's as confidence gets, and you're going up against the 118th EPA per rush attack, or per rush defense in UCF, with the 17th best EPA per rush offense. And then you look at the dropback EPA for Cincinnati. Brendan Sorsby has been electrically efficient so far, 20th best EPA per dropback offense, going up against the 73rd best EPA per dropback defense. And that's before I even mention Horace Lockett and his injury, a guy that has been a key player over the first 4 to 5 games for the UCF Knights. Big man in the middle, 355 pounds. I mean, they were moving starting tackles for Iowa State last week as one of the top 10 rushing EPA defenses in the country. And now you are missing a key defender on the interior front of UCF for a defense that is terrible against the run, efficient wise. It's going to be a rough day for this UCF defense, in my opinion. As long as Cincinnati continues to not turn the ball over, which Brendan Sorsby has done a great job of not doing so far this year. His turnover-worthy play rate is really, really low. I'll go and I'll find that in just a second once Jeff retorts. But, man, this is a horrible matchup for the UCF defense.
It's interesting because I noted, and whenever I crossed over with our Locked On UCF guy, Mike G, we were talking a little bit about the fact that preseason, the Big 12 or Locked On Big 12 had our preseason poll that we did, and UC was 13th and UCF was 14th, but it just really seems like there's a much bigger gap than that. Obviously, UC very underrated because at this point they're really starting to make their push for the top of the conference. And on the other side of this, it just doesn't seem like UCF is that much closer to them than they were preseason.
Yeah, I think it's a major gap right now, especially with the injuries. I mean, Taven Jackson is not going to be 100% even if he plays in this game. Same with Ja'Carri Brown. I mentioned Lockett being out as well. And real quick, Brendan Sorsby, he's committed 3 turnover-worthy plays the entire season, including just one last week against Iowa State with a 1.9% turnover-worthy play rate. That's astounding. That's going to get the job done, especially having a 2.9% turnover-worthy play rate last year, according to Pro Football Focus. So in a game like this, when you're this big an underdog, you need turnovers to happen, especially on the road. And unless Tawee Walker just fumbles another pitch like they had happen last week, I don't see Cincinnati putting up multiple turnovers in this game to give a wide open door to the UCF defense. And on top of that, I mean, it's bad when we look at this defense and how they perform this year, even deeper into the numbers. 107th in missed tackle rate, 86th in yards after contact allowed on rushing attempts by opposing offenses this year. And they're giving up 0.753 scramble EPA to opposing quarterbacks. That's 125th nationally. They might run for 300 yards in this game, Jeff. It's very possible we see a 3 next to that rushing total for Cincinnati on Saturday.
Man, I always try to do the whole, you don't get too comfortable before the ball's actually kicked off, but feeling pretty comfortable.
If Cincinnati executes, they're going to boat race at UCF. If they play the best they can play, they will cover this number. I'm not sure that's going to happen coming off the biggest win since 2006 at home, but even a little bit of a lesser effort should still be a 10-point victory.
Yeah, that'll be the interesting thing, the hangover, and how quickly does that subside as we get going on Saturday. But I know this. We definitely got some thoughts. We got some predictions. We're going to tell you exactly how we see Saturday going down. Coming up next. Today's episode of Locked On Bearcats is brought to you by Mazda's moving the game forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, they move culture, and they keep the game moving forward. And quite frankly, we're just going to keep talking about this Bearcats offensive line moving the game forward. They're moving everybody forward. The way that they were moving Iowa State down the field was absolute domination. When it comes to what Gavin, Gerhardt, Joe Cotton and company are putting together on the field right now, this Bearcats offensive line feels unstoppable. And they're really opening great holes in the run game and keeping Brendan Sorsby clean in the pocket for everything whenever he drops back to pass. Just like the Bearcats offensive line moves the game forward, so does Mazda. Because when you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. Just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. I encourage you to keep the conversation going with Russ and myself after the show is over. You can follow me on Twitter and on TikTok at Jeff Carr with 3 Fs. You can also follow Russ at Russ Heltman 11 on Twitter. And you can also follow the show at LO_Bearcats. We're on all the social medias too, Instagram and all that stuff, and TikTok, the show, just all one word, Locked On Bearcats. You'll find us there as well. All right, so we've laid this out and kind of looking at the lines over on FanDuel. FanDuel's got Cincinnati minus 10.5 on the game, laying 10.5 points for Saturday. The over-under at 53.5. I'm a little bit curious on that one just because I feel like there might be a little bit of garbage time points for UCF late in the game. Kind of feel like the over is once again in a good play here. I don't know about the spread, though. What are your thoughts? How do you see Saturday going down?
I got the Bearcats winning this game 34-24. So that would make it go over. I don't know what the Bearcats point total is right now. I would be shocked if it's higher than 34.5. So it would probably be over on the Bearcats point total for what
32.5.
There you go. So that would hit the over on the Bearcats point total right there and be the 5th consecutive game where the Bearcats post 30 plus points, which, Jeff, has not happened since the COVID shortened season back in 2020. They didn't even pull this off in the historic 2021 college football playoff run. So a chance to really affirm the fact that this offense is taken hold from Scott Satterfield and is here to stay in the Big 12. Big opportunity this weekend for the Bearcats. I don't think they cover that 10.5 number, though, because of one phase of the game we haven't talked about at all. And that is special teams. UCF has one of the best special teams units in the entire country, one of the best kickers in the country. Great kicker matchup this week between Steven Rusnak and the UCF booter, who, pull him up right here, is Noe Ruelas. I probably completely just butchered his name, but he's 17 for 18 on extra points this year, 9 for 10 on field goals made, has only a one miss from 40 to 49 yards, is a long of 53 so far this season, 44 points. Much different kicker scenario going into this game compared to last week when Iowa State didn't have any kicker to rely on. And that's why I think UCF is going to be able to get maybe 3 or 4 field goals here. They're going to be able to turn those drives that have happened against Cincinnati, those longer quality drives, into points. I don't think they're going to be able to execute in the red zone, and that's why Ruelas will have to go out there that many times. But that will be enough to eventually get them near the 24, 25, 26 point mark. And it's just going to take a lot of points. That's just a lot of points asking from Cincinnati to be able to cover that number at that point. So because of UCF's acumen in the kicking game, in special teams in general, they are tied for 7th highest graded special teams unit in the entire country so far this season. Only Houston, Indiana, Penn State, Nebraska, BYU, and Minnesota are higher than them, and Vanderbilt at a 90.2 grade. So even Cincinnati, which has been very good on special teams, can't even claim that highest status as an 81.5 overall grade on Pro Football Focus so far this year. So to me, I think that kicking, not necessarily advantage, but neck and neck, right on par with Steven Rusnak type of impact, will be enough to keep this game close and turn some of those drives that will get across the 50 for UCF into real points, even if they're not able to execute in the red zone. So give me the Bearcats 34-24 here, and they put up 30 plus points for a 5th consecutive game and really start to have fans dreaming big. You'll be 1 win away from bowl eligibility, and you will be right there staying in the top 4 odds to win the Big 12, although they already got a minus number next to Texas Tech and those absolute dogs in the trenches for the Red Raiders. That team is nasty.
Yeah, that's a matchup that I'm glad that UC will only see if they get to Dallas. So that's kind of a good thing there. But getting back to this game, 34-24 would be over for both Cincinnati and for UCF on their total points for each team. They got UCF at 20.5.
Yep.
I still do think they hit the over on that one. I'm going to give them 21, and I say that the Bearcats get to 40. I think that I'm with you. I think they go off on offense. I think they control the clock. They control a lot of different things about this game, and that there's a little bit of backdoor cover for UCF a little bit later on chance. But I think they mess up. And I think that the Bearcats, there were a couple of key calls against them against Iowa State that really felt like it kept that game much closer than it really was. And I think that they don't see that happen to them this week. I know that's me betting on Big 12 officials, and that's probably a bad bet. But I say that they cover. I say 40-21 is the final score of this one. And I'm with you, though. Whether it's your score or my score or whatever it is, it really feels like we're going over 30 again. And we're really starting to see where he was hired and everybody's like, man, we're getting an offensive-minded coach for UC. We haven't quite seen that come, bear itself out until this year. But I really think we're seeing the fruits of the labor of Scott Satterfield. Now, where we were critical of him just a few weeks ago, it's clear that he is finally hitting his stride, and we are finally seeing what he was going to bring to the table all along here in Clifton.
Right. And let's think back to 3 years ago. You had 0 of the 3 big factors working in your favor for this program. You just had a coach leave, your greatest coach ever in Luke Fickell. You're going to a new conference on top of that. And you're also going through no facility to operate in. They didn't really have a facility to operate in when Scott Satterfield is here. So you have all 3 of those things checked off the board now. You have an entrenched staff that has been here for multiple seasons for the most part, all across the board. That's a massive factor. Pete Thomas, same quarterback coach with Brendan Sorsby. Brad Glenn, same offense coordinator with Brendan Sorsby. I mean, he hasn't had that since his high school career. Very few quarterbacks get the same coordinators back-to-back seasons at all in their college or professional lives. So it's so important when you're able to do that. And then on top of that, I mentioned the staff he's hired, but the talent acquisition staff as well has been really, really impressive. They've identified the right guys in the portal. They've developed those guys out of the portal, and they have kind of worked really well in sync between Jack Griffith and Zach Grant on the talent side and Scott Satterfield and his entire staff on the coaching upside. So what has that all led to? Well, you look at the Massey Composite 24/7 Sports rankings right now. Among the 74 power conference teams in the entire country, Cincinnati is rated in the bottom 5 of total composite talent. Just goes to show there is some serious coaching and some serious culture going on in the Bearcats buildings right now. And that building, the Sheekley Performance Athletic Center, I mean, we are seeing direct impact of that building leading to winning. They would not be 4-1, in my opinion, if they didn't have all the bells and whistles at their disposal right now. Look at that injury report that we didn't really talk about much of, but we talked about some of the issues that UCF is having. There's no issues for UC right now in terms of guys, major questionable marks. Ormani Arnold is the only questionable player right now. His status up in the air. But, I mean, Gavin Gerhardt, probable with a little ding. Evan Pryor, probable with a little ding. Other than that, this roster, knock on wood, has stayed miraculously healthy for a wide-ranging college football team. And I think you can give a lot of credit to that building that they are going into and basically living out of day in and day out during the season. When you have all these factors rowing together towards one goal, it's a lot easier to win football games, and it's a lot easier for Scott Satterfield to climb off the hot seat and maybe get to bowl eligibility before the end of October, which is looking very, very likely given UC is a major favorite against UCF, and they're going to be a major favorite next week against Oklahoma State, which ESPN's matchup predictor has them winning 89.6% of the time. If the matchup predictor rings true, they're going to be making your bowl plans before Halloween.
Gonna love that. That's gonna be a lot of fun, and I'm excited to see what they can do this Saturday against UCF. Hopefully, we're both right in some measure of this, and they just absolutely boat race the heck out of UCF out of the building, because that would be fun to see and see them roll into Oklahoma State with all the confidence in the world. But we appreciate you for joining us here on this podcast. Thanks everybody for checking out today's Locked On Bearcats. If it's not your everyday routine, make it part of your everyday routine. Hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the comment. Do all those things will help the algorithm and help Bearcats fans find this community more easily. Now, make sure you check out the college football kickoff show. It's coming in here when Thursday. Actually, it's out already on the Fire TV channels app. Drake Toll from Locked On Big 12 and former Coach of the Year a couple of different times for the AP Coach of the Year, Gary Patterson, are joined by Jesse Hawley and the local experts of Locked On, previewing every big college football matchup. That's over on the Amazon Fire TV channels app. And thank you again for checking out today's Locked On Bearcats. We'll be back with you tomorrow.